for me, I'm very much, I'm here's a problem. Let's take care of it. I have a solution for that.
Our goal when we opened was to provide the highest quality care that was possible at a price people could afford.
I literally talk to physicians daily. Kelly, I can't even log in to see my own billing. I have no idea what's going on. I get a report once a month and nobody can explain it to me. I make it a point to train the physicians how to go and pull their own report.
I'm going to be on the course reporting tomorrow afternoon.
You are?
I am. I'm going to follow Jordan Spieth and Will Zalatoris and Scotty Scheffler. I'm not really reporting, but I am going to go watch the park.
Probably drink a couple beers.
Yeah, I might have a beer or two tomorrow afternoon. I mean, that would make my commentary even better. Well, hello, folks. Welcome to the Cutting Edge Podcast, episode number 11. Is that right?
It is episode 11.
Yeah, this is a big one today. This is a big one. We are celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the Carroll Clinic here in Dallas. Just an absolutely terrific group of doctors and facility. Excited about getting into that. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about some of our sponsors. We've got, of course, TexAssist, CJ, your group, the Carrington group here in Dallas, a firm that I lead, a family office firm. We've got Ortho Lone Star and their group, as well as Moonshot Marketing, and Jen Eaton's huge in helping us just get all of this out to the people that we wanted to get out to.
That's right.
Where can people find us, CJ?
Well, they can find us on Facebook, can find us on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
find us on YouTube, can find us on Instagram. I personally like YouTube the best because you get to see us in person.
Yeah.
You get to see our faces, you get to hear our voices. But
You
can also find our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Okay.
So you can subscribe and get notices when we put up new podcasts.
So said another way, if you're technologically challenged, just go to Google and type in the Cutting Edge Podcast, and surely it'll show up somewhere, right?
Don't call me Shirley.
Okay, Shirley. Why don't you introduce our guests?
I sure will.
Right.
So with us today, Tyler, we have Dr. Buz Burkhead here directly to my right, and then Dr. Kurt Kitziger to his right. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah, it's great.
So as you said, Dr. Burkhead, it sounds like you got voluntold that you had to be here for this today.
That's correct.
So we'll have to give credit where credit is due for that one to Mr. Rick Weimer, your Chief Administrative Officer.
Well, you better give it to Drew Dawson, our president at the time, but he played linebacker at USC, so I pretty much do what he tells me to do.
I can't believe we don't have Rick on the show today.
He just makeup didn't get here in time.
Oh my gosh!
Just
you know how
didn't
much
get
powder
him
he has to put it?
Well, so Tyler, let's jump in.
Yeah.
Right. So the topic of the show today is 100-year anniversary of the Carroll Clinic. So for those of you that don't know, the Carroll Clinic is an orthopedics group here in the Dallas area. Very prominent, what I consider to be, at least from my perspective, the most well-respected orthopedic surgery group in the DFW area and likely in Texas, at least in this part of the country. And if I'm not mistaken, Carroll Clinic is the oldest orthopedic group west of the Mississippi. Is that correct?
Second oldest.
Second oldest.
The Campbell Clinic in Memphis
Okay.
is the oldest.
Man, that's
Actually, I think maybe you're correct, because I think the Campbell Clinic may be
east
on the east of the river, and we're the second one south of what they called the Mason-Dixon
Listen,
line.
I hate to keep bringing up Rick, but Rick confirmed this same statistic back on episode 4 or episode 5 that in fact what you just said is correct.
Yeah, and I think at that time we thought Rick might be the oldest acting administrator in orthopedics west of the Mississippi.
Possibly. It's a job that ages you pretty damn fast.
Yeah, so guys, just tell our audience, 10,000 foot view, talk about the Carroll Clinic. What is the Carroll Clinic? Who's a member of it?
The clinic is an orthopedic group. We have 22 physicians now, and we all are specialized in different areas of orthopedics. We kind of divide up the body, for lack of a better term. And we're all subspecialty trained in various parts of orthopedic surgery, and we got together. And it's been a long ride with a great cast of doctors, and I'm just thrilled that I was able to be a part of it.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So, Dr. Kitziger, what's your particular specialty?
I do hip and knee replacement surgery, and I was actually somewhat of a refugee. First half of my career was in New Orleans, and I came here after the hurricane wiped us out. I needed a new town, and they needed a new hip and knee guy to help out Dr. Peters and Dr. Schubert, and so it worked out perfectly.
Wow, that's pretty fortuitous timing.
That it was.
Yeah, the good, something good that came out of something pretty rough, right?
It was rough, but Dallas is North Texas is a wonderful place to raise a family, and it's a great place to do business. And the clinic is, having been on the outside for the first part of my career, the clinic is very well respected as an orthopedic group for years and years. And I felt so fortunate to be able to just kind of fall into it. And, other than working with Dr. Burkhead, it's been a smooth sail.
So did Katrina, and excuse my ignorance here if I didn't know, but did Katrina actually wipe out your facility you were in, or did it just wipe out the business side of it?
It wiped out my neighborhood.
Okay.
And on the business side, our office took some pretty substantial water. And, going back and forth, basically my wife told me she didn't want to be a pioneer at the rebuilding of New Orleans where we were. And I was told that the dog, the cat, the 3 daughters, the son, and the wife were staying in Dallas.
Well, makes the decision easy, huh?
Yeah, because I had been working a week here and a week there for the first 6 months, and it became pretty obvious that it was going to be a better opportunity for the kids and a better opportunity for my practice to settle down in Dallas.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Well, thank you.
So, Dr. Burkhead, share a little bit about your specialty.
I'm a shoulder surgeon exclusively. I came to Dallas. I've been at the Carroll Clinic 37 years. And I finished my residency just right at the point in time where people were actually starting to subspecialize. And several people told me there was no way I'd ever be able to make a living. I did shoulder and elbow as a Renaissance man. I still do both right and left shoulders, but they told me I'd never be able to make a living and that I'd have to be a generalist as well. And my practice has evolved. And since I've been there, we have probably at least 3 other dedicated shoulder and elbow surgeons. Let's kind of talk a little bit about the evolution of orthopedics. I was going to give you just the history of the clinic because this is our 100th year anniversary.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome.
It was founded by W.B. Carroll, who was born in Cedar Hill, Texas. And as a physician, he was in World War I with the American Expeditionary Force. And World War I is really a turning point in a lot of things. If you had a broken femur, your thigh bone in the Civil War, it was about a 95% fatality rate. And there was an English orthopedic surgeon named Hugh Owen Thomas, and he developed the Thomas splint so they could transport wounded people, and they lowered the rate to 20% or so. But when you break your thigh bone, I mean, you bleed a lot, but if you can straighten the bone out, it won't bleed nearly as much. And the other thing they were exposed to was English orthopedic surgeons. And at that time, England had a specialty in orthopedic surgery. We didn't. It was mostly general surgeons who did fractures in this country. There wasn't really a specialty in orthopedics. So Dr. Carroll came back to Dallas after spending time in England with a huge interest in children's orthopedics. And so he came in 1921, and the same year he founded the clinic, he founded Scottish Rite Hospital. And his office and clinic were right next to where the hospital was. And he practiced there. He passed away in 1944, I believe, but he worked for 24 years. He actually lived above the clinic. He and his family
Really?
lived above the clinic. They had a swimming pool that was heated to let the kids with polio, because what they treated back then, not exclusively, but a huge number of polio patients. So every epidemic, the Carroll Clinic and Scottish Rite Hospital grew, and that's where a lot of people went. And he added a partner named Gerard, and then a doctor named Corky Barnes joined him in the 40s. And he was an interesting guy because he had been hit by a car as a child and broke his hip, and he had surgery, and it later became infected, and he had to have 3 operations on his hip. They were called cup arthroplasties. He went to the Mayo Clinic to have them done, and none of them worked. And so he had what we call a girdle stone hip. He really didn't have a hip joint. So he operated on crutches, and he walked his daughter down the aisle on crutches. He carried plaster in his car in case they came across a car wreck. He would set their bones, and people would just, I talked to his daughter earlier today.
Wow.
People would just come to their house, and he would treat them. And that was kind of, Marcus Welby, kind of the idyllic thing. And then Dr. Carroll had what everybody would have. He had a 1-stair commute to work, he didn't have to. And they operated mostly at Baylor Hospital, but the clinic was on Maple and Oak Lawn.
Gotcha.
Right
So
where
is
Scottish
that,
Rite Hospital is
is
today.
that the original? Is that one of the pictures you sent us of 2626 Maple Avenue? Is that the
That's
original?
Right. It was like a Spanish
Yeah.
Mediterranean style building. I think it was a house that they converted into the clinic. And then Scottish Rite got built right behind that area. So they did the groundbreaking. I think maybe you have a picture of the groundbreaking of Scottish Rite.
Sure do.
So that was in 1921. And the Masons and the Scottish Rite founders generously donated this hospital for crippled children.
That's a pretty incredible start. I mean, you and I were talking earlier here before we started the podcast about how many partners there have actually been in Carroll Clinic to date, and it's not nearly as many as I thought. That Carroll Clinic was actually really didn't grow substantially until just recent history. Is that correct?
I think that's accurate. They were, when I joined, there were 5 surgeons, and there had been as few as 2 or 3. Orthopedic surgery, the surgeons in the 50s and 60s didn't do that much surgery. They had figured out how to fix a hip fracture. They could do a replacement of the hip, of half the hip, but almost all the treatment was conservative.
Casting, bracing.
We didn't have arthroscopy. The surgery was all done open, and I think I sent some other pictures about what the difference between an open knee reconstruction versus an arthroscopic reconstruction looks like. So they and they had patients back then. They didn't operate on femur fractures. They had to be in traction, and they had to be in traction for 6 or 8 weeks. So you had patients in the hospital that long. Of course, it cost $60 a day back then. I mean, you see some of these bills from the hospital. It was
2 hours.
Yeah, that's man, it's just there's so much history wrapped up in your practice. Rick and I were talking about the number of surgeries that the Carroll Clinic's completed in the 100-year history. And there aren't adequate records to really go back, but if you guys had to take a guess at how many surgeries have been performed by Carroll Clinic physicians in the course of 100 years, wild-eyed screaming yes. What do you think?
Including the ones that you and I did today? I couldn't even venture a guess, because you have to understand that the operative nature of orthopedics evolved, and the clinic evolved as techniques became available in plates and screws and implants. As that became available, then the clinic grew. So the surgical volume, you would see almost like an exponential curve at it, because in the first 50 years, it wouldn't be very substantial at all.
One of the things that I've always wondered, Tyler, because there's this book, Good to Great, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the difference makers between companies that thrive for a period of time and then they decline and ultimately they go away. And then there's companies that they thrive and then they get better and they get better and they continue to get better. There's never any step backwards, right? They might level, but they never go backwards. What do you think's been the key with Carroll Clinic to be able to make it to 100 years?
I have an opinion. I think part of it is that none of us are the Carroll Clinic. The Carroll Clinic has been there. And so there's this legacy of excellence that's there, and just not only good surgeons, but just fantastic human beings. And I got the pleasure of working with them. I did my residency here at Southwestern Parkland. We rotated through Baylor for a year at that time. And I worked with all the doctors in the Carroll Clinic, and I just, wonderful people that, I wouldn't have the career that I have had, which has been incredible, any other place, I don't think. And they, nurtured us, but they were great role models. We call them gentlemen surgeons. They were kind, they were just amazing people.
That's
the clinic's basically the clinic's bigger than anybody that's in there. And
Sure.
We've got some big egos, mine included. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. Mine may be the biggest, because I wanted to be the best narcissist you could be. And I didn't want to be a half-assed narcissist, so I wanted to be the best one. So, but we all, it's kind of like brothers. I think we bicker and stuff every once in a while, but I think whenever the chips are down, somebody gets sick, or somebody's wife gets sick, or somebody's kid gets sick, or something like that. I mean, everybody bands together and realizes that the clinic's just, it's a lot bigger than any individual part of it.
I think Buzz is exactly right about that. I think it's the surgeons, and not just the surgeons. We have employees that have been in the clinic for years and years. And so when I first got here, I felt the legacy almost as a bit of a weight on me. It's like, man, you have to step your game up. You have to be able to not only take care of patients, but you have to interact with so many different groups in the medical field, and you have to be a good person and try and get along. And when there's a dust up, kind of work it out and move forward. And so that, and of course, the building has changed a number of times. The location has changed a number of times.
Talk to us about that, right?
Because Buzz can tell you, because I was at the Lemon Avenue for 2 weeks, and then I wound up in Disney World.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how we got from Maple Avenue to Disney World. Maybe Buzz can tell you that.
Well, the original clinic was Dr. Carroll's, like I said, was at home, and the clinic at Maple and Oak Lawn. And then they moved to 2828 Lemon Avenue. They built a building down there, low rise, 1 story, at Lemon and Oak Grove. Where there's an Oak Grove cemetery back there. And so,
Okay.
And they started that was 1962. I was talking to Dr. Barnes's daughter earlier today, and he died before they moved into that clinic building. And they were there, and when I first joined the clinic, we were still in that building. And then we bought a building, a catty corner at 2909 Lemon, that was at a 2-story structure in the back and still a 1-story clinic, no surgery, no imaging. It was strictly just offices. And then we had a satellite office at Presbyterian.
So when
and
did
then in 2005, we moved to this incredible place, location that we partnered with a company to build. So we had basically it's a 5-story office tower with a surgical hospital, and then a separate tower that has our own surgical hospital beds, so our patients can stay overnight and 2 or 3 nights if they need to after surgery, and they're right there. It's just very spoiled, because I used to have to drive to Presbyterian. This is in 1990 when Central was under construction, and the on-ramps were about 10 feet long. And they didn't, it was a good thing I couldn't get distracted because we didn't have cell phones then, but I'd have to listen to WRR just to keep from, having road rage myself. And I'd have to go to Presbyterian, then I'd go to Baylor, and then I'd finally get to the office. So I started my day, I started making rounds about 6:30 in the morning to get there. And now I live 8.5 minutes from the office. I drive there, I go to clinic, I can see my patients. We're spoiled now, honestly.
Yeah.
I was just reflecting a little bit on the history and how you guys both had at least similar views on how you last for 100 years, or how does a business, to your point, go from good to great. And my mom got operated at Carroll Clinic last year during the pandemic, and I've never fortunately had to be operated on there, but my experience was is that, and she 100% agreed, and so did my dad, that it's the old saying that people may forget what you say and they may forget what you do, but they never forget the way that you make them feel. And from the minute you walked in the door, in a fairly uncertain time, but it was an emergency surgery she had to get done. It didn't matter who it was, if it was the security guard at the front, all the way to the doctors, nurses, physical therapy, just everything that was going on there. It was just first class from beginning to end, made her feel ultra comfortable. And I just think that is a huge part of the culture that's been created there. Not all hospital experiences go like that. We've all had really bad ones. So I think that's hats off to you.
It's great to hear. And I wish 100% of our patients' experiences were like your mom's, but the problem is they're not all as good as that, or the patients are. And I imagine your mom's probably a really easy person to take care of. There are people that are easily satisfied in this world that if you do one thing for them, the smallest thing for them, they'll remember it forever. And there are some people that you just cannot make happy, regardless. I mean, you can be the greatest surgeon in the world, and it's just a huge spectrum of patients. But I'm glad your mom had a good experience.
Yeah.
And I wish everybody had a good experience there. And most people, we get really high marks on this, press gaining survey thing. And since we have an interest, financial interest in the hospital, we can influence what happens there and the people that work there. And I've been a patient there myself twice. And so I had really good care too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, last year
they're still sending me bills. So I mean, I'm still the collection agency. It ain't cheap. I mean,
and he's moved 3 times, right?
They're repoing my car next week to get the money back. But
last year was you touched on that subject. It was a real test for us because we feel. The clinic really feels like everybody's together, and we want to make sure that our nurses are well taken care of, and our medical assistants and our administrative people. And there was a phenomenal amount of uncertainty. We don't know how we're going to pay the rent, and the feds came up and helped us a bit, but it was really an issue. And then you had the mask, and people don't want to wear a mask, and they want to, and when's the vaccine going to come? I'm going to get it. I'm not going to get it. So, you might think of the clinic as just running as an orthopedic, bone and joint entity. But, the fact of the matter is there's a business side to it that is impacted just like your business probably was during the same time. And you have the same challenges, and we have the medical challenge, and then we got this COVID in the business, and find employees.
Early on, they had a edict, from the governor that we couldn't do elective surgery.
Right.
And I actually got turned in.
And I'm the compliance guy.
Yeah, he's the compliance guy. We had a disgruntled. There was one employee that really just didn't want to come to work during the pandemic, no matter what. So I think she got let go, or he. I don't even know if it was she or he. They got let go. And so she turned me and one of our partners in for doing elective surgery. Well, the surgery I did that she turned me in for, it was on a police officer who couldn't sleep at night and couldn't draw his gun because his shoulder was so sore. So I thought that was I thought that constituted an emergency to me. But and
I had to talk to the governor, get everything to calm down, and Buz.
The Texas Medical Board, they reviewed it. They said nothing wrong was done. But that just the hassle factor sometimes when practicing medicine. I mean, I can laugh about it now, I probably spent 10 hours getting all this data. The city of Addison, the police chief, called him, said, this is exactly what he needed. Why are you persecuting this guy?
In your career, I'm 16 years at Carroll. I'm 30 years in practice. You're 37. How many people do we have looking over our shoulder now on how we do a surgery or a node, or how we file a surgical request or order a test? It's unbelievable how much that aspect of medicine is.
Yeah, Agent Smith is coming to visit us from the Matrix.
It's interesting because that I feel like is with everything. I mean, we're in the most litigious society now, and it doesn't matter what industry it is. I mean, I happen to be in finance and run registered entities, and it never ends, and it seems like the red tape just keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's frustrating because you're just trying to do your job, but it seems like
should we talk about the electronic medical record?
Oh, well, I'm gonna guess that you're not a big fan there, Dr. K.
Well, I can see certainly the benefits of having a instantaneous ability to look at tests, look at nodes. But its rollout was basically not well thought of or thought about. Basically, we were asked to start doing these electronic medical records before there was even an electronic medical record company that had shown any kind of track record. You had all these mom and pop places, and we were kind of laying on the sideline for a while and waiting for some company to bubble up to the top, but we had to make a decision before that, so we just threw a dart at a board, and that's been a real challenge. There's so many things of that nature that that kind of slow us down these days, you know, and take us away. I know Buz's patients love him. Okay, they love him because he spends time with them. All right, and he talks to them. It's difficult. It's really difficult now when you're trying to fill out these compliance rules and regs on your notes and how you do this and that, how you charge for this or that or the other thing. And you could literally be in a doctor's office and not even have the doctor look at you as he's just typing into this machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw patients until about almost 6 o'clock, but I was there until 8 o'clock last night, dotting I's and crossing T's in these boxes. And the fun thing about working at the Carroll Clinic is when we had paper charts, is you get these charts from 1952, and it would be something like nowadays. You talk about litigious, you have to document all these different things in the history of the operative note. The patient understands all these risks and benefits. Got to go through all that. There are operative notes like carpal tunnel released, signed on carbon copy, sutures out, instead of, the patient returns today, he is 12 days post-op from a rotator cuff repair, his wounds are well healed, his incision is clean, and you get 3 paragraphs. And the problem is this stuff is, the electronic records are
you can't find the pertinent information,
and they're redundant. It's
buried.
It's redundant. They every time the patient comes in, they repeat it. So they say, well, it's energy efficient. I mean, if you print somebody's record now, you lose a rainforest in Costa Rica. I mean, it is reams and reams.
My favorite old note was, Mrs. Jones continues to make progress in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Let me talk about some of the other personalities that
she will need surgery on her knee now.
Since we're in the history of the Carroll Clinic, this is now, but I got recruited there was a guy named Truett James and Ray Lawson. Truett was this wonderful man, and his father was actually George Truett. No, his grandfather was George Truett, who founded the First Baptist Church and started Baylor Hospital.
Wow.
And Truett would show up. He had beautiful gray hair, wore a fedora, always dressed, tie, go to the emergency room. He didn't go in scrubs like we do. He'd be fully dressed and have a hat on. And he was just really kind. He had a wife who had had a stroke, and he took care of her, and he still was a great doctor. Ray Lawson had a wife who had breast cancer. He would work all day. He would go home and give his wife a blood transfusion. He raised 2 boys by himself after she died.
Wow.
And those are the type of people I think that, I think about as really embodying. And there was a guy named Henry Beckering who just had legendary huge hands. I mean, everybody talks
Did you
about-
know him?
No, he had passed away. He died like 6 weeks before I came, but his hands were huge. And Dr. James was a smaller man, and they would go to Scottish Rite, and they'd have a child who needed bilateral osteotomies. That means he needed both legs broken and then shifted to change the correct deformity. Well, Dr. James would make an incision, take drill holes like that, take a chisel, pop it, and then
Bend
gently. Dr. Beckering would just take the kid's leg and break his leg and put it in a cast. So he was always in the surgery lounge drinking coffee, 20 minutes before Dr. James ever got in there.
Wow.
I have his desk.
Yeah.
Dr.
Really?
Beckering's desk was bequeathed to Steve Curtis, who was he did mostly spine.
Yes.
Spine surgeon for the clinic, maybe the first. Well, no.
No, he did. Ray was a fellowship trained spine surgeon, and Steve did Paul Harrington's fellowship, which he's the guy who really revolutionized scoliosis treatment in this country with Harrington rods.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
Dr. Beckering bequeathed the desk to Dr. Curtis, and I got the desk from Dr. Curtis.
Wow.
We have some exam tables. When they moved to 2828, they forgot to order any furniture for the rooms. They had chairs for the patients outside, but they didn't have any exam tables. So over a weekend, Dr. Beckering and his, guy that worked for him built these exam tables plus stools to get up on them. You could throw them out. You could throw them out of our building. We still have 3 or 4 of them in our clinic.
Really?
You could throw them off the 5th floor; they wouldn't break. I mean, these are some of the most sturdy construction you'll ever see, and handmade by
Man, some incredible history. I'm gonna pivot for a second. One of the things that I think about is, in every organization's history, there's usually a series of events or a handful of events that the organization highlights and goes, man, that really helped us become who we are today. Whether it's the hiring of a critical person, it's a critical milestone that they crossed. When you guys look back at Carroll Clinic's history, what do you think has been just fuel that has helped Carroll Clinic become what it is today? I mean, anything that comes to mind?
For me, it would be when Bob Vandermeer became the Dallas Cowboys doctor. Sports medicine, Buzz and I will tease the sports medicine guys. They just, they like to operate on young, healthy people, and we take care of everyone else. But
and they wear loud sport coats. So
they do.
That's one of the criteria for being a
very,
sports
very,
medicine
very,
doctor. Yeah.
very much so. But I think that was important because, really, there has been a glamorous side of orthopedics, and let's face it, Buzz, we have to admit it, it's sports medicine. They're on TV, and they get their names in the paper in the sports section and whatnot. And Bob Vandermeer really started that, to my knowledge, when he got that job. And it's been in the Carroll Clinic. And now Dan Cooper, one of our really fine sports surgeons, has been the physician since Bob retired. And I think that really was a big thing for the I think the profile of the national profile of the clinic.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit more about Dr. Vandermeer. He passed away about 2 years ago now. He was really a pioneer arthroscopist in an era when people would say something like, that's pinhole surgery for pinheaded surgeons. I mean, they just, and so he
Band-aid surgery.
And so he's just kept at it. The Carroll Clinic's taken care of all the sports at SMU since it started. And so Dr. Barnes was a team doctor. Dr. Vandermeer was their team doctor before he was the Cowboys doctor. And so he really pioneered arthroscopy. And I think there were still, even in the 80s, there were still people doing open knee surgery that, were involved with that team. And I think he operated on Tex Schramm's wife. I think that's what was the turning point, because he did a scope on her. And I think she'd had an open surgery someplace else. And so that's how he got the job. But I think what he did was, the other thing that he did, the clinic used to just share all the money, and not everybody works the same level. And so it was a source of conflict, because he was working like really hard. We had some other guys that would, sit at their desk and think they wanted to write novels. And so, but he had to pay, the overhead was all split, and then they all took the same salary. And so right before I got there, that's when they started doing this thing where we kind of split things on productivity, and there was a common amount, and then there's a productivity amount. And I think that is probably even more so than him becoming the Cowboys doctor, a reason that we were able to recruit really high quality people that like to work hard.
Yeah.
We usually don't want people who have wives that are independently wealthy. We like guys whose wives want to spend money, want to have a bunch of kids, send them to nice colleges.
Did you see the compliance guy
Send
over
them to
here?
nice colleges. Send them to nice colleges.
Yeah, I
And
missed
so that
one
way-
meeting.
That way, yeah, they
missed
have to
one
work,
meeting.
so
They made me the
we don't want people to show up and not,
You got to
be
kid.
enthusiastic and have sort of, I think, most of the guys, I think they have a sense of excellence. They want to be, I always told my kids, what you need to do, you need to essentialize yourself. You need to become essential.
Yeah.
And,
Hey, that's a great, that is a great piece of wisdom
mhm.
from somebody who's been in their profession for
Yeah.
37 years. I mean, that resonates with me.
It does. Yeah, essentialize yourself.
Yeah.
And the thing that we
My other advice was, don't shit on the conveyor belt of life, because it will come back to you. But that may have to be edited out. It's a circular. Life is a circular conveyor belt. Do not shit on the belt. Is what I always told them. Yeah.
Hey, we don't have to dump either one of those because we're on a podcast, and it's great.
That's
We're on
right.
a podcast. Compliance guy's gonna take a break.
Yeah, my kids are still in therapy too. Let me tell you, they're all over 30, and they still have a doctor with a beard and a German accent. So,
One of the things that I think about with Carroll Clinic is you've got to have physicians just climbing all over each other to want to come in and work with you guys. I mean, why? I could imagine that you guys could be much bigger than what you are today. So maybe talk about that. Like, is that part of your culture that you want it to be?
We are so
size.
lucky that the recruits come to us, and we just try and keep loading the truck, doing our work, and we get resumes in. And as one of the senior physicians starts to slow down or retire, we usually have a pretty good folder of good physicians that we could look to hire.
Do you guys have a fellowship program, or do you
Well,
have
that's it.
fellows
That's
spend time with you?
yeah, I've had a
This
shoulder
process.
fellowship since 1992. This is my last year of doing it, though. But for 30 years, I've had one and sometimes two individuals who finish their orthopedic training spend a year with me learning how to do shoulder and elbow surgery.
And will the other shoulder guys take that up?
No, I don't think so. It's a funding problem. I mean, it's just, one of those things where companies used to fund a lot of orthopedic fellowships,
Yeah.
but they're under so much scrutiny from the Justice Department. So, and then I've had a lot of generous patients over the years that have donated to a foundation that I use to pay their salaries, because we don't charge for their services. They're there to learn, and send them to meetings and things like that. But it's finally kind of just gotten to where it's a little bit burdensome for me. But I've really enjoyed it. I mean, it's.
You have a head count on how many fellows have come
40,
through?
About 40 I've
About
trained.
40.
Yeah. And I'm surrounded by them. There are probably 5 of them here in Dallas. But there, a couple in California. Some of them have gone into academics even, and but most of them have kind of a practice that's similar to mine.
Is that a common theme amongst your physicians at Carroll Clinic, that you feel like that's part of how you pay the community back, is by training others, by mentoring others? What
We have, we were on a hiatus now, but we have had residents come through the clinic, both orthopedic. We had family practice residents who have to do a certain amount of time in orthopedic surgery at the university, the Southwestern family practice residents come through. And then, did you know we're starting a total joint fellowship?
Right.
Yeah. So I think in 2023, we'll have our first fellow in hip and knee replacement surgery. And so we've got a group of 4 of us now, and 2 young, energetic guys, Brian Gladnick and Brad Waddell, who are just eager to teach, and just both great surgeons, good researchers. And so they'll be a real benefit, because I can't believe there's no total joint fellowship in North Texas, really.
really?
No, you got to go to Houston. Maybe Austin has one, but nothing. So I think it'll fulfill a need, and plus, it can be a source of recruiting as well. Get a fellow you like,
Sure.
keep him.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a community service thing, but there's something about teaching. This is another aphorism of mine, is that the only way you can really stay immortal is to teach. And my teacher, the guy who taught me shoulder surgery, who Kurt trained 5 years with down in San Antonio, was a guy named Charlie Rockwood. And 2 days ago, I FaceTimed Dr. Rockwood. He's 92 years old.
Wow.
He's bedridden, but I saw a patient that he operated on 36 years ago, and she did a little video presentation for him. And I'll go see him here in the next couple of weeks. I just, there's something, you get this relationship. It's when you spend a year with somebody, and you go to clinic with them, you operate with them, you go to their house for dinner, their kids are kind of like my grandkids. It really is kind of like a family. And so all my fellows know about Dr. Rockwood. They know,
Yeah.
he had this funny accent, talk like this.
He's from Oklahoma, and what did you say? He only recruits 5'9" guys.
Yeah, everybody looked like a cookie cutter, He was 5'10". Every resident was 5'9". They were all married kindergarten teachers that taught at church school. I showed up down there. I had hair down to my shoulders. I'd served. I didn't look like them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
But I ended up fitting in pretty well.
Oh yeah, Buz is legendary down in San Antonio in our program. He really is, but he's pretty much legendary wherever he's been. The thing is, when you're working in orthopedic surgery and you're doing late night trauma and you're taking care of problems that come up, you really form a bond with the people you work with. I can't say it's like being in war, but sometimes it almost seems like that. And it just, I don't know, it makes for long lasting, really warm relationships with the people that you serve with,
That's I mean, it's just an incredible place. What, we look forward, because we're starting to come down to the end of our time together. We're 100 years today. What is Carroll Clinic doing intentionally to ensure that this survives not just one more generation, but multiple generations, and it continues to carry forward with the following that it has?
Yeah, I mean, private practice, if you were to ask me 10 years ago, I'd say it'd be extinct by now. and for a number of reasons, it's persisted. But it's most residents now, they'll go into an employed position. They won't go into a private practice where you run the business yourself. But it has persisted, and I think we've done really two things that will ensure our best chance of going another 100 years. The first is joining up with some select orthopedic practices around the state of Texas and forming a group called Ortho Lone Star. So technically, our name now is Ortho Lone Star, is Carroll Clinic, a division of Ortho Lone Star. And there's a group in Tyler, there's another group here in Dallas, there's a group in Houston, in Austin, and we're looking to expand that. And I think that is our best way to go forward and to keep the legacy going. The second thing we've done, and this is something that's been really championed by Paul Peters and Dan Cooper, two of our long-standing, well-respected orthopedic surgeons. They've started a Carrell Clinic Foundation. And, you know, we think about how Buz gave a I learned great history of how the clinic first started, and I learned something. I didn't know that that he lived in the clinic. I don't know if I could do that one, Buz, but what's been formed is the Carrell Clinic Foundation, and it intends to take care of kids that age out of Scottish Rite. And those patients typically are taken care of soup to nuts until age 18, and then not so much. They might have a job, they might have insurance, or they might not. They might have a disability that prevents them from getting a job. So the foundation will intend to provide orthopedic care to the best that we can to those folks that are too old to be in the Scottish Rite anymore. And we're looking to try and through Dr. Cooper's efforts, trying to perhaps take that nationwide, because there are a number of clinics similar to Scottish Rite in other cities. What's the other one? Shriners.
There's a Shriners Hospital, and there's a Scottish Rite in Atlanta.
And so
they closed down the Shriners Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City, somebody just said. So again, funding, you know, Scottish Rite here has been blessed with, you know, some really, really wealthy donors, and they have a huge, you know, foundation. We're just getting ours started, but I think Dan Cooper has done an incredible job. He's a really organized, you know, analytical person, and he's done a really good job of setting this up. And yeah, I think we've got a new president. We have a new president, Andrew Clavena, who I gave the ultimate compliment to. I let him operate on my back, and so he did a great job. And he's very mature, but young and a lot more energetic now. And so we've had, I think that's one of the things is, you know, organizations, you know, die from the top down. And so we've been really fortunate. Richard Schubert, who was a year behind me at Parkland, was our president for probably 10 or 12 years. And then Drew Dossett, who, like I said, had played football at USC until his knee got totally destroyed, has been the president. He's really guided us. He's a really, as you imagine, strong guy, 6'5". And he's really guided us through a really tough time with this pandemic thing. Was really a worrisome thing. We didn't know when we'd ever be able to do elective surgery again. I mean, no one knew. And so having him there as kind of the rock for all of us, I think has been, and it's like, you know, we all got together. I mean, there were certain, you know, conflicts about, you know, everything, but we just all compromised. We said, we're going to stick it out as a group and we'll get through this, and put the, you know, greed and the money aside and just, you know, try to keep the place going.
Yeah, we've had good managers. Rick Weimar's been really good for us, kind of moving into the 21st century of how to run a business. And the actual nuts and bolts of the business, we all volunteer or get volunteered for committees or the president's a volunteer position. It's incredibly time consuming. Being in compliance can be really time consuming, and Buz is on
Party committee, the fun social committee.
well, I'm the rush chairman. Okay, you're
I'm the social here.
you're the
Yeah.
I get the new recruits in, but it's a volunteer thing, and so that's important. That now Andrew Clavena's moving up into that role, and he'll do a fine job. And Mike Kerr, another one of our sports guys, is going to take over my compliance position. For which Mike, if you're watching this show, man, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this has been awesome. I mean, I'm so pleased you guys chose to join us. It's great to be able to have you guys tell your story and just share your hearts, because man, we can tell you guys have an emotional attachment to your practice and to your patients, and that's not the case with everybody that we talk to or that visits us. I mean, this is, it's by choice that you have chosen to cultivate the culture that you have at Carroll Clinic. And I think that's what makes it so unique and what causes it to attract the best and the brightest. So, closing thoughts for our audience. Anything you want to share as we wrap up talking about, the first 100 years and what's on the horizon?
If there are any young people out there watching that want to be doctors, I think a lot of doctors discourage young people. They just too much hassle, too much paperwork. We don't get paid enough.
Takes too long.
All this.
The training is
but
long.
there is no other profession in the world, and this is not necessarily orthopedic surgery. There's no other profession in the world where you can make a living helping people. Most people that make a lot of money, they have to screw somebody. It's a zero-sum game. Somebody's got to lose.
Yeah.
And so this is just an incredible, way to live, I think, and it's a God thing for me.
I just feel like I'm lucky. I'm the luckiest guy around, Luckiest guy around. Luckiest guy.
Well, it's so refreshing to hear your perspectives and see that you guys are so thankful for what you're given, because it's very easy in this world today to take things for granted, but you guys clearly don't, and that obviously permeates your organization. So Tyler, any final thoughts from you?
This is fun. This is it's really interesting, and the word that comes to mind for me is intentionality. And you can tell there's a lot of intention at the Carroll Clinic. So it's been a lot of fun, and every week's unique. And this is, I think, takes the cake is the most unique that we've had, which is great.
Yeah, man, it's been great.
Well,
Dr.
thanks
Kitziger,
for
Dr.
having us.
Burkhead,
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
thanks so much for
Appreciate it.
joining us.
Yeah.
And to our audience, look forward to joining us next week. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you don't know, just Google the Cutting Edge Podcast. You'll find us. And till next time, have a great week.